What is up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Destination the Show. This is episode 54. We are recording on Tuesday, October 8th, 2024. This is going to be the Twins end of season farm system review part three of four. My name is Jamie Cameron, joined as always by a very peppy, cheerful, annoyingly cheerful, perhaps, Jeremy Nygaard. How are you, Jeremy?
I'm good. I'm peppy. I'm optimistic about all things.
I haven't seen you have this level of energy maybe since draft night, honestly, which is
It might
several
have been
months ago.
it might
So
have been before draft night because draft night was exhausting.
draft night was so tiring, like streaming for 4 consecutive
Uh,
hours plus.
yeah, that
Um,
was something. But no, I feel good right now. My second favorite team in the world is winning by like 20 at half. And you're in Pennsylvania,
uh,
which turns my excitement level dial up just a little bit because I know that you aren't real happy right now.
I'm not happy. I'm not happy. I don't like recording from Pennsylvania. I don't have anything against Pennsylvania per se, but recording here is a pain and I don't enjoy seeing your face when I'm here, if I'm being honest.
I
It takes a long time to set up the lighting. The lighting still looks bad. I have to haul
got
my
the
mic
lighting now.
halfway across my mic comes to me halfway across the country. Now has a bunch of dents in it. I'm not, you know, but
You tell me how terrible that part of Pennsylvania is. I went there this summer just to see, and it's that part of Pennsylvania is actually really beautiful.
it is beautiful.
It's
It
hilly.
is
There's
beautiful.
there's there's trees everywhere. There's tunnels. I ate at the Sonic near where you are right now and gassed up at the Sam's Club. I mean, it was actually a really good time. And then we just kept driving. We were headed to Jersey City. We made it. I saw a skunk on the street. Um, it was fun. And here you are, not quite as far east, trying to enjoy life as much as I do right now.
So I'm trying really hard. So you mentioned the Lynx who are comfortably up. What are your thoughts? Let's play the dangerous game, right? Of they're moving on because I think they're better than Connecticut. They're more well rounded than Connecticut as a team. Um, how do you think they stack up in the championship round? What's your take?
They defend, and that's what's got him here. I don't think anybody at the beginning of the year, like I think I'm a more casual WNBA fan because the NBA is kind of my jam, and the
Hmm.
NFL, and then baseball, but also I like basketball. So I paid more attention early because I'm like Paige Beckers as a Minnesota Link would be a lot of fun, and then they
Hmm.
started winning a whole bunch of games with a bunch of people that I hadn't really heard a lot about. Defisa Collier is really really good.
Unbelievable player.
McBride is good, but then like Williams runs the show really well. They just have a lot of players that play their role really really well.
Hmm.
They made a trade late in the season, which helped. Uh, New York is good, but the Lynx beat them in the whatever the cup is that they play for. So I'd anticipate it'll be a good fun series. Um, but Connecticut did come back in Game 4, so there's still certainly work to do. But it's fun. It's fun to watch, like a team that had a nucleus of four players and they retired all their jerseys and won a whole bunch of titles, and then without having a lot of success, like I think Diamond Miller was drafted like second overall,
Hmm.
has done nothing. Where they've just kind of built this thing and have had a ton of success and are competing because they've they're a team, and that's what's fun to watch. They defend really well. They have some ladies that can shoot it really well from the perimeter, and it's having been in the Target Center when it gets rocking. It's fun to watch it on TV and see the Target Center rocking. And Minnesota sports, they have this curse, except for
Except for,
female teams. The
yep,
female
that's
teams
right.
can get it done.
The Lynx are the standard bearers of excellence, always have been. Um, Okay, before we jump into some prospects that we're going to dig into today, couple of other Twins related things I want to get your take on. Thad Levine out as general manager after, I want to say 8 seasons, but I also could have completely made that number up. Any strong opinions on this? Do you think it matters? Do you care? Do you think they're going to replace that role? Certainly seems like the sense is that they're not. Any strong opinions on some turnover in the front office?
I don't have real strong opinions. I think it's fair to say, without saying too much, that we were kind of tipped off on this, right? And so his role has kind of diminished, right? And we've talked about that and wondered why. So I don't know if they rebrand this role. I think they'll promote guys to keep guys in the organization.
Yep.
But it's pretty clear to, I think, all of us that Derek Falvey is number one and way up number one. And so it wasn't going to work with a guy that is a general manager. And so I don't know that it really changes things. I thought they worked really well together early. And so it felt weird when they seem to not really work at all together. I don't think it changes anything. I do think that this is going to be an off season where we get some questions answered. And I think the first question was answered today, and now we can move forward.
Okay, let's move forward because I don't have anything to say about Thad Levine. Seems like a great guy, very good in front of a camera, a very good interview. Don't think this makes the slightest bit of difference to organizational direction, decision making, any of that. Let's talk about Twins availability on TV, because there was some news there today that is pretty significant, which is essentially that the Twins are going to have a direct-to-consumer product produced by Major League Baseball, similar to what other organizations that were done with Bally started last year. I believe the Padres and the Diamondbacks. The announcement today, it was made clear that the Twins, Brewers, and Guardians are all following suit. Sounds like price is going to be a number of different options for folks, either $20 per month or season long for $99. What's your take on this news? This is a fairly significant development.
Yeah, I don't know how everybody else feels, but I continued to pay for DirecTV over the course of a long time just to have access to watch the Twins. And, Timberwolves, the convenience of having DirecTV was great. But I told my son when we got in the vehicle after football today, I said, hey, we're going to get rid of DirecTV. And that's going to save, I'll pay the $100 one time, and that'll save me over the course of
so much
a year, about $2,000. And so I love it. I'll pay whatever I have to pay to get the Timberwolves, but beyond the Timberwolves and the Twins now, I have everything else. So I love that it's going to be an option. The one thing that I do really like about cable or dish or whatever is there's not this giant lag. And so when I'm watching YouTube for like Sunday Ticket, it's like I'm getting alerts on my phone before I'm watching it. And
yeah, you got to resync everything up or disable notifications on the app.
So that's going to be hard. But I do think it'll get more eyes on the product. It'll be easier to access, because I think that's a source of frustration, right? Even if they're playing poorly, like, it's a source of frustration when you can't just turn on the TV and watch them. And that's not going to change things with Apple TV and all of the other things. But I do think that casual, maybe casual is not the right word, a little bit more than casual fans will gladly pay to have access to them all the time, and hopefully over multiple devices on your phones, and the younger generation, which I still consider ourselves a part of, will be able to access them more freely. Because Bally's, honestly, if I tried to watch it on, like, at work or anywhere that wasn't on the TV at home, it was very difficult. So I do look forward to having a little more access to the Twins, because it's like, I felt like 2024, everything else is available, and then the Twins, and it's like we're still stuck in 1996.
Yep. Yeah, dude, I cannot wait to get rid of Comcast, as you mentioned. And like we're like fortunate in that way to have access. We didn't even touch on blackout restricted fans who are going to be able to have access. People living in Iowa are I feel like celebrating this some of the most out of anybody. But yeah, the double whammy of easy streamlined access and folks significantly saving on bills, cutting the cord, all of that good stuff is exciting. Obviously, more details on that to come. Despite my like low being in Pennsylvania energy, Jeremy, I'm feeling energetic about our next month because I have like 3-4 episodes. We got like 3-4 episodes planned out in advance.
Love
So
it.
we're doing 2 more on the Twin system this week and next week, and then we got 2 guests back to back, and I think it's going to be great.
I don't know who these guests are, so that sounds super fun to me.
You will, all in good time. And I think like we're now getting to the portion of the kind of prospect rankings that get a little bit interesting. Maybe it's guys that we haven't talked about as much this year. Maybe it's guys who missed time because of injury. So I'm excited to jump into these guys with you. So we'll follow a similar format, right? Some kind of overview. How was their season? Some numbers, and then we're just going to jump into takes on these guys, what we think of them, whether we're high, whether we're low, stock up, stock down, stock the same. What are the major questions they have facing 2025? Ready to get into it?
Yeah, let's go.
Okay. First on the list, and I just want to highlight this because someone actually reached out and asked me this. Is this your ranking of no? I pulled these off the Twins Daily current rankings just for the sake of convenience. So that's pretty much the order they're in at the moment. We will do a like ranking the system at some point this off season. Now is not the moment for that. First guy I want to talk to you about, Gabby Gonzalez. Came to the Twins, acquired in the Jorge Polanco trade, aka the hasn't worked out for anybody yet trade. Only played 76 games through injury, missed time through injury in 2024. Was formerly a top 100 prospect per MLB Pipeline and nobody else. I do not understand how he was ranked as a top 100 prospect. Here's the numbers on 76 games. In 2024, he hit 255, 327, 379. That's good for a 706 OPS. Does not strike out a lot, just 15% of the time. Does not walk a lot, just 7.6% of the time. Really good bat to ball skills. He chases a ton and he doesn't hit the ball very hard. And so this is one of those profiles where like I don't know, it's a little bit like Williams Astudillo-ish, right? Who like never missed the ball, but like never really hit it hard either. And we'll get into him as a profile, but let's start kind of big picture. How do you assess the Jorge Polanco trade from a Twins lens now? Now that we're one season down the line, right? They acquired Justin Topa, pitched 2 innings for the Twins. Anthony DeSclafani never pitched for the Twins. Gabriel Gonzalez only played 76 games in the Twins minors, and Darren Bowen, who had his ups and downs in a season at Cedar Rapids. What is your take on that trade now that we're all the way through 2024?
Yeah, it didn't work out positively for either party. But I don't mind it yet for the Twins because Polanco was going to be one of a number of players, right?
Yep.
And so Gonzalez and Bowen both provide some sort of depth, right?
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I think you were out never real high in Gonzalez. I was a little more optimistic, just because he doesn't strike out a lot, and so I think that's a usable skill.
Yeah.
He's never going to be, and like you said, how is he a top 100 guy? That's a really fair question. But I do think he offers enough from like variety, maybe.
Sure.
Where he fits into this system as something of value. Like Severino is a similar-ish type prospect, strikes out a ton. And so when you can trade off a little bit of maybe power for a little bit more contact, a little bit more defensive value, that's just that to me that's good depth. And I don't know that he ever fits in as like a first division regular, but even if he can be a fringe 40-man guy,
Yeah.
as a right-handed, can play all three outfield positions, but probably fits as a corner, can elongate the lineup a little bit by not just giving up at bats. I think there's still value there. So, if he's a top 15 prospect, I think that's fine. It's when he becomes a top 3 or 4 prospect that it's like, yeah, reevaluate our system.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think like he was overranked as a top 100 prospect and then overranked coming to the Twins and then had a poor / shortened season. My question with him, and like you made a fair point, Jeremy, of like, not everyone's going to be an MLB regular and you need guys to accrue value in a variety of different ways, whether that's by trade, whether that's being a fringy 40-man guy, AAA depth, whatever it is. I just don't see a very viable path for this skill set in this organization in the next couple of seasons, right? He is a poor defensive outfielder who doesn't hit for power and chases a ton and has like pretty good bat to ball skills. And so that's just like not a profile to me that's going to play super well in a corner. And then if you stack that up with also the fact that the Twins have 2 of the best outfield prospects in baseball, and obviously that's putting the cart way before the horse, but you've got Walker Jenkins, Emmanuel Rodriguez, a number of kind of pre-ARB guys with the Major League team already that have shown that they are Major League contributors. I don't have a ton of optimism, and I think what we're going to see is Gonzalez's prospect status erode slowly over the next year and a half to the point where he's in the 20 to 30 range as opposed to what he is now, which, by the way, on a lot of lists, he's still like 7th. That's nowhere near for me. He's not in my top 10 personally.
Yeah, and that might be a ceiling versus floor thing, right? I think the floor is a little bit higher because like Winokur, we talked about Winokur, higher ceiling, significantly lower floor. I think Gabby Gonzalez plays in the major leagues as maybe a 4th outfielder type, maybe not for the Twins. And who knows how long that takes. The kid's 20 years old.
That's true. So, age is the one thing he has on his side for sure.
Yeah, and so I do think that there's the possibility that even if he's not a usable outfielder for the Twins, he's a usable asset if they decide to make a move. Because I do think there's going to be teams that find value in his skill set. So you're right. I mean, you're right. When it comes to where he fits in the hierarchy of outfielders, it's not high.
Yeah.
But I do think that there are usable skills, or at least projectable skills, that still make him relevant as a prospect. And at 20 years old, a lost season doesn't help. But I do think, coming off a year where he was a 19-year-old with an 837 OPS and 18 home runs, there's still the possibility. So you're lower on him. I'm a little bit higher, but understanding that we're not projecting Gabby Gonzalez to be one of the 3 future starters. And I think that's where, if that's where this system was, we would be much more concerned. Walker Jenkins, Emmanuel Rodriguez, Byron Buxton's long-term, Matt Wallner's a dude.
Trevor Larnach still around.
Yeah. Like, right. This is a good situation to be in. So like having that type of player as depth, if he was the hope, that would be far more concerning.
Okay. Let's move on. I should have mentioned off the top, there's some guys on this list who we have like touched on kind of tangentially in recent episodes that we won't spend as much time on. That applies to the next guy because we talked about him a little bit in our last episode, but just quickly want to recap the numbers here and then get your like headline for 2025. So Cory Lewis, Twins reigning minor league pitcher of the year, from 2023, missed the beginning of the year with shoulder issues, shoulder fatigue, ended up putting together a really strong season, mostly at AA, one start at AAA to finish the season. 2.55 ERA, 3.69 FIP, 3.86 xFIP. Struck out 27% of hitters, walked 12%, a little high there. I think the good fastball shape. The knuckleball is obviously exciting. It's also super weird because he throws it so hard. The kind of like challenges or question marks, I think, not elite velocity. His fastball velocity was down at the end of last season. It's already a little bit on the lower end, I think, of what you're looking at for a major league starter, and then strike throwing a little bit inconsistent at times. So, Jeremy, your take on Cory Lewis for 2025? Where do you think he starts? What do you think the ceiling there is? Is he going to pitch in the majors next season?
Yeah, he'll start in St. Paul. I do think he pitches in the majors next year. The thing with him and Zebby are they probably project as number 4 type starters. And when you have a whole system full of them, that's not great.
Mm-hmm.
Pablo's here for the long term as the top of the rotation guy. I think Bailey Ober has proven to us that when the Twins are going to be competitive, he's going to start playoff games, which makes him a top 2 or 3 starter. Joe Ryan, when he's right, is also a playoff caliber starter.
Mm-hmm.
And then you just got to fill these last 2 spots. I think David Festa's ceiling is a little bit higher than maybe Lewis's is at this point. But Lewis is coming off of a year that he wasn't healthy and wasn't great.
Mm-hmm.
But when you look at guys like Zebby, you look at the Cory Lewis types, even Louis Varland, like there's usable stuff as a reliever if they can't be a starter. So I think you start him in St. Paul as a starter. You try to develop him, continue to develop him as a starter. I think there's still the chance that he could be that at a mid rotation type, but at worst, you're getting a guy and you look at and maybe it's overstated. Like you look at Cory Lewis's body type, and you're like, that's a durable starter, right?
For sure.
And so even if he can take the ball every 5 days and be a 5th starter, there's
huge
value there. But I do think with that knuckleball and with his arsenal, even if he becomes a bullpen arm, and same with Zebby, there's a ton of value in there with all the control that you have. Twins did a great job drafting, great job developing. We would have loved to see him take that step in 2024. The health wasn't obviously there.
Mm-hmm.
And so now there's questions, but I do think there's still the chance that he is a very good major league pitcher. And I think that's all you ask, right?
Yep. I mean, dude, I know we've talked about this so many times. Like, it's like, sounds like a broken record. So we'll move on in a second. But the college 4 they drafted in 2022 is just an unbelievable set of outcomes you've had so far from the combo of, right, if we're going in order of when they were drafted, Andrew Morse, Cory Lewis, Zebby Matthews, and CJ Culpepper. The fact that you have one of those guys in the major leagues already, 2 of those guys starting at AAA, and one of those guys starting at AA who also had a season cut short by injuries is absolutely insane.
Absolutely.
Okay, we're gonna get weird, Jeremy, because we really haven't spoken about this guy much at all season. So next guy we're going to talk about is Yasser Mercedes. He is an outfield prospect out of Puerto Rico, 19 years old, one of the top bonus recipients for the Twins in the 2023 international class. And he was poor in his first pro season, not in 2024. So he spent time the beginning of the season in the FCL. In 50 games, he hit 331, 421, 568. That's good for a 989 OPS, 24 walks, and 29 Ks. So about the same number of strikeouts as walks, 18 stolen bases at a good clip there. He played 10 games for Fort Myers at the end of the season. It was rough. I think that's a massive step up from the complex league to low A. So I'm curious for your thoughts on this guy who we really just haven't spoken about much. And I guess we should start with this. Like, are you someone who just kind of doesn't care about international prospects until they play in the United States? Do you take note of international prospects' performance when they're still in the DSL? Because we haven't really touched on that much. I'm curious what your kind of perspective is there.
Yeah, so it's kind of a yes and no to all of that. I do pay
Mhm.
attention to them. They are still prospects. I care very little about how they do,
Mhm.
um, because it's so much of a cultural thing. And so they're signing at 16. They're getting thrown into a complex. They don't speak really. A lot of them don't speak any of the language.
Mhm.
Now they're being taught the language. They're being taught professional baseball. They're away from their families for the first time. Like there's all these variables to me that are very um, much impactful. And so he was 17 years old in the Dominican League, and his OPS was almost 1,000 as a
Mhm.
17-year-old. Like that was great. He comes stateside, plays in the FCL in 2023, and was god awful.
Yeah. Yep.
And so I'm like, okay, not gonna put too much stock into that. He's in America. He's in a 25 game sample. It wasn't great, uh, and then gets to redo that in 2024 in twice as many games. And again, OPS of almost 1,000.
Yep.
And they're playing their games in the afternoon in the sweltering heat. I give guys like that a ton of credit. The pitching is typically bad, right? The defense is bad.
Mhm.
Uh, Struck out 39 times, took 24 walks, 6 home runs. To me, he had a great season. And you get that little cameo which just says, "Hey, we believe in you. Let's give it a shot." He wasn't good. He had what
Like a
five?
40. It's like a 42% strikeout rate in 10
Yeah,
games. So it
he was
was
bad.
ugly.
5 hits, 18 strikeouts. But as a 19-year-old, you're taking essentially a high school senior, and you're going to say, now you get a
Yeah.
full season in low A ball. At any time, if he beats that league, he can go up to Cedar Rapids
Yep.
and
Get cold.
yeah, and is on that trajectory where he could be a top 10 prospect in the organization.
Hmm.
But that's when you start getting recognized for what you do
For
kind
sure.
of kind of globally. So yeah, I do pay attention to a lot of that. I don't put a lot of stock into it. I mean, the Kuna kid was bad. The Rodriguez guy, not good. Like there's so many things that can happen in your first year of pro ball that what Mercedes did in 2024 is worth taking note of.
Yep.
And you throw him into the mix with the prospects, because you're talking 3 years from now he's going to be in the mix like Rodriguez is, that the
And
man
still
and Rodriguez.
and still only 22. Um,
Yeah, for sure.
so let me ask you this then, because we're not going to talk about them in this episode, but we are going to touch on a couple of DSL guys next episode when we wrap up the system with kind of guys we didn't get to who just had unbelievable starts, particularly Eduardo Beltre.
You love him.
I I do. I do. I do.
You
Um,
tweet about you tweet about Beltre more than you probably talk to your wife about important things.
Begs to differ. Okay, so let me ask you this: how do you kind of impart any kind of tax on these guys if you're putting together a prospect ranking? How do you think about international guys? Because I find this very difficult personally, right? So like Beltre is a good example. um he just absolutely roasted the DSL this summer. I mean,
Mhm.
just like unbelievable performance, one of probably the 10 best hitters in the DSL. How on
Yep.
earth do you rank him in a strong twin system, knowing that like that level is so far from professional baseball, from like MLB level baseball? It's really hard. And like he's 17. I
Yeah,
just find that a very difficult thought exercise to kind of try and meet out where to place him.
yeah. Well, and I think when it comes to prospect rankings, everybody kind of has a way that they skew their rankings.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, you would look at my rankings and be like, oh, he prefers upside, right? And so I probably always rank these guys a little bit higher
Mm-hmm.
uh, because I'm looking at their age, I'm looking at their level of competition, the fact that he's 18, 17, 18, 19 years old and dominating uh, really low level ball tells
Mm-hmm.
me something. Um, and then there's others that are like, well, I want to see them do something before I rank them. So
Right.
the range is pretty significant, but I feel like I would probably rank him higher than 12th if I was doing prospect rankings, just
Mm.
because I believe the ceiling is that of an all-star, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the hit rate, the chance that he gets there are relatively low.
For sure.
But you look at the best players in baseball right now, and few of them, if any, were born and went through the draft process, right?
Yep.
Otani. So Aaron Judge was not a high pick, but Soto was a guy that didn't get a ton of money. Acuna was someone that didn't get a ton of money.
Mm-hmm.
So there's the probability of being an all-star low, but the tip of the iceberg on these guys is so much higher than the third round draft picks or the fourth round draft
Yeah.
picks that I tend to always kind of to err on the side of upside, and
Yep.
that's me personally. um and so guys sometimes turn out to not be there, and I'm always a little bit skeptical of guys as well, like Oswaldo Arcia,
Yeah.
Rodriguez, like, because they burn me. But
Yep.
I do believe that the upside on those guys is higher because the way they learn ball was a little bit different.
Yep. One final thing on Mercedes, because someone specifically asked about this. We're still in the mode of these guys are not part of the like Roman Barinas, who's the Twins' relatively recent hire as the like director of scouting in Latin America. I think his job title was something like that. These are not his guys yet, because we should remind folks that agreements are made with international prospects several years ahead of when they are eligible to sign. And so these are still guys that have agreed with kind of the Twins previous regime. And in fact, I do believe the 2025 top, what is it, top 50 international prospects for 2025 list was released at Pipeline. And none of these are listed by teams yet. But if we wanted to, we could absolutely spoil which players in the top 30 are signing with the Twins, because it's pretty easy to find out. All you need is the internet. Let's move on. Let's talk about a guy we've talked about this guy kind of a lot, but I'm gonna put these numbers in a slightly different way. Okay, so let's say I gave you a player, Jeremy, and you didn't know anything about his like triple slash line, right? And I told you he strikes out 24% of the time, which is a decent amount less than average for his level. He walks 10% of the time, which is solid. His contact rate's close to 80%. He only swings and misses like 14% in zone, and he doesn't really chase much. What would your assumption be about what his like triple slash line might look like?
I would guess his on base is above average and his slugging is average to above average, and so
Yeah.
that means triple slash is well, average to well above average.
Yeah, for sure. I would have drawn the same conclusions, but this prospect hasn't kind of matched with production what the approach is yet, right? And so we're talking about Kyle DeBarge, who I'm forever going to dub the like Sonny Gray pick, because he was the Twins' 33rd overall selection with a comp pick they got for Sonny Gray. Great approach. Like all of those numbers we just kind of listed off are above average for the level where he was at. But his triple slash line was only 235, 322, 343, a 655 OPS. Biggest part of that, he just hit the ball on the ground and did not elevate it. Average launch angle was just 2.2 degrees in his minor league debut. And we've talked about DeBarge a decent amount in this Twins draft class, obviously, because we covered them extensively, in the kind of aftermath here. Do you care at all about what these guys did in there for you? You're already shaking your head. You already know what I'm going to ask you.
Yeah, I don't care about his 102 at bats in Fort Myers. What's interesting, and maybe I'm not going to say alarming. What's interesting is that he hit 10 home runs at Louisiana Lafayette as a freshman and sophomore combined.
Mm-hmm. I know
And
what you're
then
going to say.
went Brian Dozier and hit 21 home runs as a junior. So also Wood Bat League in 2023 Summer League hit 0 home runs. So like, who is he? Is he a power guy, or is he a not power guy?
Yeah.
The outlier right now is the junior year that he had in college.
Yeah.
And so I'm not sure. We both liked him coming into the draft.
Yeah.
We both assumed he would be picked by like the Guardians or the Astros.
Yep.
And when he was drafted by the Twins, we were both excited for that. And so I'm not ready to say, oh goodness, this isn't going to work. I don't know who he is yet as a player. And so I think what we would have hoped is go to Fort Myers, show that you are better than that, and then debut next year in Cedar Rapids, which may still be the plan. I just think there's the possibility that he has to go back to Fort Myers.
Yeah.
Which isn't a death sentence, but also isn't really what we probably would have hoped for.
I guess I just don't really see that much of a difference if he goes back to Fort Myers for 6 weeks, fresh off a healthy offseason, hopefully, fresh off-season work, and tears it up, and then is in Cedar Rapids in like mid to late May. Like you said, obviously you would prefer the first option. And like to your point about like what kind of a hitter is he? It's really hard, right? He is an undersized dude. He's smaller, shorter. He's 5'9". He's listed at 5'9", 175. I think the weights are always really unreliable, so I wouldn't go off that, but I think the height is legit. I think he's probably a like teens home run guy as a pro. Like if you look at his like 90th percentile exit velocity, that is right, just very slightly above average for the level as a college hitter. I want to say it's like 102. It's right there. Average exit velocity. Like he's impacting the ball just fine as well. And so I do think there's pop there. Not certainly the like junior level in college pop with a very bloated offensive environment, but teens home runs for me would be my bet. And I personally do not care if he starts next season in Fort Myers or does not. Any of these cluster of college guys they got in the first round, I think make the most sense as a bet to say, here's the most likely next Twins guy to be a top 100 prospect. Just because of the status of like, right, like high level college hitter, played against good competition, should accelerate quickly at the beginning of their first full pro season. But DeBarge, one I'll be monitoring, and certainly hoping he gets out to a hot start. Okay, let's move on because we're still going to cover 3 more guys. Next, super excited. We're going to talk about a left-handed pitcher who has not thrown a pitch as a pro yet. And I think this is someone who's high kind of on our list of folks we're excited to see next year. That is left-handed pitcher Dasan Hill. He was listed coming out. I had to watch our draft reaction to make sure I got all my facts right. Listed at 6'5", 175 coming out, which is kind of mind-boggling. Obviously, he's lefty. Fastball's been up to 97. 2 distinct breaking pitches, a curveball and a slider. For a lot of prep pitchers, those 2 kind of shapes tend to blur into each other, and so having 2 very distinct two very distinct shapes is helpful. Feel for a changeup. And then the line that I pulled out of the Fangraph scouting report ahead of the draft said, a feel for command uncommon for pitchers his age and size, which got me all hot and bothered when I read it. where do you start this guy, Jeremy? If as let's assume he had like a healthy like draft camp, like did all the velo stuff, they undoubtedly have him working on, and they're pleased with what his kind of prep and off season look like. Where do you think he's starting in 2025?
I can't see him starting anywhere but Fort Myers, and I think that looking at kind of where Charlie Soto started. Soto spent the entire year at Fort Myers through 74 innings, 21 starts, or 21 games, 20 starts. To me, that's kind of the Hill plan. The difference is Soto walked 33 and 74 innings, and I think that was kind of always the question. And I think Hill is probably, it's fair to say he's a little bit more refined. So I think that maybe he doesn't spend the entire year automatically at Fort Myers and could make it to Cedar Rapids. I don't know that that's maybe the most likely of scenarios, but if he could even be on the exact same plan, hey, you're going to make 20 starts, you're going to go 3 to 4 innings every time. We don't care so much about the results. Here's what you're going to work on, and then we'll get you to Cedar Rapids the next year. I think that's perfectly fine. So he's the fun type of prospect.
Yeah.
Right.
Let me ask you this then. Let's fast forward to the end of the 2025 season. So let's call it August 2025.
Okay.
And let's assume that Dasan Hill has hit like 65th percentile outcome for his 2025 season. So he's done well. It's not been perfect, right? There's been stretches of dominance, probably like some struggles along the way. Where do you think he's going to be in terms of Twins pitching prospects, in terms of like best stuff in the system? What kind of ceiling are we talking about here? Now, that's an unfair question of me to ask you because he hasn't thrown a professional pitch. Like, what if his arm falls off tomorrow? But I'm just curious kind of where you see, the ultimate ceiling being here. Because I think we're both on the same page that it's, higher end.
Yeah, I would say there's definitely a collegiate pitcher in the system that has the highest ceiling. And then I would say
you're talking about Connor Prielipp.
100%. And then I would say that Raya has maybe not as high of a ceiling, but a higher floor. And then you put Hill with a higher floor and a similar ceiling to Charlie Soto. Like those four to me are kind of the highest. Like if we're talking about the potential to be a top of the rotation guy, right? Raya probably is the least of those four to be a number one or number two. I do think they all have the ceiling to be that. And I think Soto has the lowest floor. And being a lefty, Hill has just a higher floor because if it doesn't work as a starter, there's something usable there.
For sure.
And then we can talk more about Connor Prielipp later, but I just think he's on a different level entirely.
Wow, that's like a lot to unpack, man.
So you asked the questions.
I'm trying to unpack your order in my head to see. I agree with a lot of what you said.
Because that's what we do. We agree with each other, Jamie.
No, we don't agree with each other. Okay. We're excited to see Dasan Hill, though. I think like that's the most anticipated Twin System debut for 2025, without a doubt.
Sure, but what's the ceiling for you?
I mean, for a guy who hasn't thrown a professional pitch, you would want to say the ceiling is a guy who can start you a playoff game, right? And so I think of that cluster, like I think of that cluster maybe in a little bit of a slightly different way, right? So let's take out the guys who are already in established big league starters: Joe Ryan, Bailey Ober, Pablo Lopez. They can all start a playoff game if they're performing well. I think that's fair, right? I think David Festa could get there. I think Zebby Matthews could get there. I'm still really high on Zebby Matthews, and I think it's natural for people's confidence in him to be a little eroded. But I also think it was an unreasonably quick path to the majors. He had like 4 starts in AAA. That is just not enough to kind of hone and refine his arsenal, his secondaries, and I think 3 of those pitches still need some work. So I would say Festa and Zebby Matthews. I'm not sure about Raya. I want to see more in AAA, so I don't feel 100% confident about him. But then, yeah, of the other guys you say, stuff-wise, Prielipp, Soto, and Hill, I think, are the 3 guys that really like jump off the pages. Like, wow, this is like stuff that could just like look different. So I guess Raya is maybe my one point of disagreement. I got to see more because we didn't have access to his AA numbers where he's been for back-to-back seasons, and so there's just like a big shroud over what his stuff has looked like for me. And then you combine that with the relatively low pitch counts, really relatively conservative innings limit, and he's only had one start at AAA, so he could get there. And I'm actually going to bring him up in a question later. So,
and the other thing too is like watching AL Central Baseball. If you watch AL Central Baseball 4 years ago and watch the Tigers play and Terry Skubal pitched, he wasn't good.
Yeah,
right?
No kidding.
But I think everybody knew that there was something there, and now he's arguably a top 5 pitcher in all of the major leagues.
Mm-hmm.
But at 24, he didn't necessarily look like that, but it was like, the ceiling is certainly there.
Yep.
And it's not that he's striking out considerably more people than he was. He's walking a whole lot less. People are hitting the ball not real square off him. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I mean, you look at Zebby and you say he wasn't real good, but you look at friggin' Jeremy Bonderman, lost 20 games as a rookie and then turned
Jeremy Bonderman.
Right?
Amazing.
But that's the thing. Like you see these guys that have enough to get into the majors and at least be serviceable, and then 3 or 4 years later are top of the rotation starters. And so that's the hard part. Like we saw Zebby, like you mentioned, rushed there.
But he also threw a 99 mile per hour fastball in AA. Like where we are too quick to forget the level of excellence that he produced in getting to a major league debut. I'm not saying you, I'm saying people in general.
Struck out Bobby Witt Jr. for his first professional strikeout.
Right.
Like, dude, it is there's ability there. There's just, it needs to be refinement, and it's not a 7-game refinement. What is Skubal's throwing? He's pitched 100. He's made 103 starts in the major leagues, and so it took until really start 55 until he was a dude.
I mean, I agree. I mean, you want to talk about an example closer to home, Bailey Ober, right? I mean, like, I know he had like 4 terrible starts this season, but he was consistently posting like 7 innings, gave up 1 run, struck out like 7 to 9 dudes. And just like he's just like constantly taking a half step forwards and a half step up. Okay, here's a guy we haven't talked about much, Jeremy, and this is another injury issue, sadly, because he missed time due to a forearm strain. This is like the forgotten guy of the 4. It's funny because they've all, at some point, I think, been the one who was like under talked about of those 4 college pitchers, and that's CJ Culpepper. He was the last to be drafted of those college 4. In fact, I believe the Twins were weighing CJ Culpepper versus Darren Bowen with that pick. In 2022, right-handed pitcher, 6'3", 195, good frame there. He finished the season at AA, 3.55 ERA, 2.84 FIP, 3.38 xFIP. Struck out, we're gonna say 27% of hitters. 7.5% walk rate, which was improved. Strike throwing was a little bit inconsistent, a little better than 2023. He just feels like a forgotten guy, but this is absolutely, in my opinion, this is my take on CJ Culpepper, a guy who can pitch in some role in the major leagues.
Mhm.
And I'm curious if that still fits for you, and what your thoughts are on his season, albeit a little bit abbreviated.
Yeah, and I think you're exactly right. And the part about him, the part about a lot of these guys is there's so much depth that there's really not a rush. And so
Yeah.
Culpepper in 2023 made 10 starts, 11 starts at Fort Myers, and then 10 starts at Cedar Rapids. And then in 2024, made 10 starts in Cedar Rapids before making 6 starts in Wichita. So
Mm-hmm.
it's really like this the split season thing that they have going on. And if that would have continued, it would have been Wichita for half the year and then St. Paul.
Yep.
But when we've talked either on air or off air about the depth that St. Paul may have, there's really
That's
not
crazy.
any rush. So if Culpepper has to spend the whole year, 23 years old at Wichita, there's nothing wrong with that.
Yep.
And so you look at his stats, and it's like he strikes out about 10 per nine. He
Mm-hmm.
walks about 3 per nine. Doesn't give up a ton of home runs. Like there's a ton of stuff to like. When Cory Lewis was really good, like people that I talked to about Cory Lewis, a lot of the responses were, yeah, but how about Culpepper?
Yep.
And it wasn't how about Zebby, it was how about Culpepper.
Yep.
And now here we have a guy that we didn't really talk about at all this year because it was, man, Zebby Matthews, and then the response was, yeah, but how about Andrew Morris?
Yeah.
And so I
Yeah,
think
dude.
it's totally fine. And the competitiveness with those four, like there's a chance that 3 of them start the year at St. Paul, and Culpepper starts here at Wichita. He ain't going to be there long
Unbelievable.
because
I agree.
he's going to be like, wait a second, dudes. I want to, make that. He could very well be there the whole season, which is fine. I do think too that he has the right sort of makeup that he could be serviceable in the bullpen, but you
Mm-hmm.
don't have to make that transition with him. You could, you don't have to because
Mm-hmm.
there's so much depth. And maybe what we see, and we've never really had that with the twin system where it's like you have your starting 5, then you have your next 5, and then you can just take other guys and say reliever, 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 reliever.
Mm-hmm.
And Culpepper really kind of maybe fits on the periphery of that top 10 where he could be someone where you're like, we're just going to develop him as a bullpen arm because he could get there quicker. But I mean, that would be whether it's him or whether it's somebody else. There's a lot of quality arms, and the Twins haven't had that in as long as I've followed their minor league
Yeah.
system, and it's the
Yes.
strength of just a few drafts.
Yep. Yep. It is unbelievable, honestly. We'll definitely come back to Culpepper in future weeks here. Last guy we're going to touch on briefly for today, then we'll knock out a couple of quick questions and get on our way is Connor Prielipp. We've talked about him a little bit, so we won't go into too much depth here, but worked his way back from his second Tommy John surgery, and so very much in the learning how to pitch again kind of zone. 2.95 ERA on his limited appearances in the season, a 1.02 FIP, a 2.06 xFIP. Struck out 42.4% of hitters at high A. I think that's over 14 per 9, Jeremy. 8% walk rate, slider spin rate over 3,100. That's crazy stuff. And then we haven't talked about this because we talk about his slider so much and just how dominant his stuff is. His changeup looks ridiculous as well. That pitch in a very very limited sample that we have access to was averaging over 16 inches of horizontal break, which is crazy. Are you starting Connor Prielipp at Wichita next year?
Yeah.
He said that without hesitation, 100% conviction, right? Like he is too good for Cedar Rapids and needs to be tested.
Yeah, 100%.
Okay.
Yeah. Now I say that with there's going to be innings restrictions, right?
For sure.
So if this is everybody gets in their vans and they head wherever, and he doesn't get on a van
Mm-hmm.
or in a bus or whatever, however they do it,
Yep.
where he stays in Fort Myers and throws on the backfields and is very much controlled until May 1st or June 1st or
Yep.
whatever. But yeah, he throws his first like in-game pitch for Wichita, and I don't know why there would be any other reason to do anything else, because he's had 2 Tommy Johns. You don't know how long the arm holds up. I want to use those bullets in the most usable reasons for the most usable reasons, and that's however's going to get him on the mound at Target Field the quickest.
Yep. Yeah, I guess the 2 lefties are my 2 most anticipated of 2025. I gotta say, Dasan Hill and Connor Prielipp. Extremely excited to see both. Yeah.
So let me ask you a question.
Mm-hmm.
When we think about Connor Prielipp's ceiling, and maybe I'm unreasonable here, so that's why I'm asking you. If he stays healthy and he, for a half a season, pitches the way that he is capable of pitching, when the big publications release their midseason top 100, is Connor Prielipp on those lists? And how high is Connor Prielipp on those lists?
Oh boy. You're trying to like entrap me into a Connor Prielipp hot take.
If you don't want to answer, I will.
No, I mean, like, I think, right. Okay. So a couple of things, right? Obviously, here's my like fairly obvious caveats about Connor Prielipp. One is, needs to like pitch consistently healthy, build up innings as the starter. 2, at some point down the line, might need a 4th pitch. He's a 3-pitch guy like Festa. And I think Festa's been like, I'm working on my curveball this offseason, make sure I have a 4th pitch. That's putting the cart before the horse, though. If he's dominant at AA and just has an absolute monster half a season, absolutely could he be on top 100 prospect list? 100%. Where the high point for me would be like 50, 65, because I just don't think they're going to elevate most people that put together a list like that, and not elevating someone from like non-consideration to anything higher than that, even though the dominance might be there.
Where was that? I mean? Where did Zebby peak this year?
Oh, I definitely don't know the answer to that. He was always a half step behind Keishel, and I think Keishel got as high as like mid 50s, I want to say, or like low 60s, and so Zebby was late 60s, mid 70s, and so I don't think that's out of the realms of possibility for Prielipp.
Zebby came from nowhere,
right?
Didn't walk anybody. Kind of Prielipp kind of has a little bit of that reputation, right? Where it was like injured, would have been in the 1-1 conversation if he wasn't.
Yep.
And so when he starts showing off, it's going to be like, yep, this is the guy we thought, a guy that was a 1-1, a lefty, hasn't thrown much. If he can throw, say, 45 dominant innings, he's immediately going to be in top 100 lists. And
I just think he's going to be in the 50s. He's going to be what Festa was, though, right? Because like Festa was good at AA and then good at AAA, and kind of
but just like off the radar,
trickled his way. But he was then being talked about as a like top next quad guy, right? So like a top 125 guy, and then he eventually debuted at like 100th on the list. I don't think you're going to see. You might see some people, some publications are getting a little bit more aggressive with their list, where they'll just throw a guy on who really deserves to be there, and so he might fit that bill. But I think there's a lot of things that have to go right in order for that to happen. But 100%. Is the stuff there for that to be a thing? Yes, I would agree.
Yeah, 100%.
Okay, a couple of quick questions, and we'll get out of here. These are all from Greg. Thanks, Greg. We appreciate you for sending these in. Especially the actual questions. So he says, after Festa and Zebby, who's the next arm heading up? Inferring that he means like to the rotation, to the major league rotation. And he goes, feel free to adjust your answer depending on whether you're talking about the beginning of the season, middle of the season, or late in the season. Who do you think's like the next guy up? after Festa and Zebi.
So I feel like, I mean, Varland's not really a guy, right? He's already been up. So I think Raya is going to be on the 40 man, is going to fit into that. I think Cory Lewis, the Cory Lewis / Andrew Morris.
Yeah, Morris for sure for me.
Real. But then when we talk late season, that would be the Connor Prielipp time. That I think if he dominates in AA, he's in the conversation.
They're gonna put him in the bullpen, dude.
Maybe.
Which I'm not saying is a bad idea, as given how left-handed relief pitching worked for the Twins at the end of this season. But look at like the Jackson Jobe approach that the Tigers took, right? Whereas like this guy is one of our best, 13 pitchers. Let's make sure we have him on the postseason roster.
And it worked for Johan Santana to be a relief pitcher for a little bit, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Connor Prielipp and Johan Santana in English, it actually translates to Connor Prielipp.
Get out of here. Yeah, Theo's weighing in agreement with Andrew Morris or Raya. I think that makes the most sense as well. Just Andrew Morris has just like a little bit of a runway head start over those two.
Yep, fair.
And then here's Greg's other question. I paraphrase this. Twins prospects who you think other teams might be higher on than you. And then he said something to the effect of names that it wouldn't hurt you too much to part with in a trade. So that any Twins prospects who you think other teams might specifically target. And I do have one that jumps to mind a little bit. So
is it Brian Acuna?
It's not. It is not.
Because that's the name for me, where it's like, oh, another Acuna brother?
No way, dude.
Oh, absolutely.
Not until you put up some type of production. It's not.
Yeah, because
he might as well be named Nygaard, honestly.
No, that's exactly the opposite of how this works.
No organization is going to target Brian Acuna in a trade because he's called Acuna.
Yes, that's exactly how this works.
No.
Dude's 18 years old. He improved, his OPS went up almost 200 points from 17 to 18, from really bad to less bad.
Oh, yeah. What was his OPS in 2024?
735.
Wow.
I 100% would say
that's an insane answer.
The question is, Twins prospects other teams might be higher on than you. And I 100% aced that test. Because I'm not high on him, and other teams would be like, "Ooh, we could get another Ronald Acuna. We could get his brother." What does Theo say? His other brother was sent from Texas to the Mets just because.
No, he had some caliber as a prospect before he was traded.
The caliber of the pot. His last name.
This is the most wild answer you've ever given to a question.
It's right.
Oh.
I want to hear your answer, though. Hey, by the way, links to the finals.
Yes, there we go. Let's go. Wow, that is absolutely flabbergasted by that. Wow, see what you've done, Greg? You've torn us asunder. My answer is Marco Raya, and here's why. I think that Marco Raya has a unusual ability to spin the baseball, and there are organizations that value that skill much more significantly than the Twins do with their pitching development. Specifically, the Milwaukee Brewers, who target guys like that. Josh Noth is a good recent example, who you loved. I want to say, Jeremy. I think we both love Josh Noth, right? He was taking a pick. It was either a pick before or a pick after Soto in 2023. He was a 17-year-old prep guy with just like an insane curveball, uneven pro debut. But Raya is that guy who has just like insane breaking pitches. And there are orgs that target that and appreciate that more than the Twins. So he would be mine.
Okay. I'm more right than you are on this one, but
okay. Well, I guess we'll see how the offseason unfolds. I don't know if Greg wants an answer to his insane question about Big Ben, but in the UK, we build outwards, not upwards. That's really what it is.
The question.
We don't need to read it on the episode.
Is it a baseball question?
Of course, it's not a baseball question.
Okay,
It is.
When you said Big Ben, I was like, is this a Ben Roethlisberger question?
No, he's talking about the clock in London.
Okay. So I asked the question because I'm curious to hear about this.
See, now you're gonna make me find it.
I am.
Hold on. This is not good.
There's a
podcasting
clock.
etiquette.
There's a clock.
You don't know what Big Ben? Tell me you know what Big Ben is.
It's a clock.
Did you know that before I just said that?
Yeah, but I don't know anything about it. Like how big is this clock?
Are you Googling Big Ben right now?
100% just did. It's a clock on a building, and also a cultural icon, according to Wikipedia.
Here's what Gregory says. 2 G's. Also, does it rain so much in London as punishment for lying about how big, in quotation marks, Ben is? If you answer the first 2 questions, you have to answer the third like I'm a genie. I assume he means because Big Ben, the clock is not big, which is 100% true. And so why would you call something that's not big? Well, it's all relative. Yeah, in London, it's like sprawl. It's like outward growth, not upward growth, like in the United States. That's the best I can do.
This is hilarious. Can I tell you this?
Are you gonna read facts about Big Ben? Because I'm gonna end the recording if you are.
I googled how tall is Big Ben. It's 315 feet tall.
Is that not big?
Well, when we went out east, I saw the Statue of Liberty. Okay.
Sure.
And I was completely underwhelmed by the height, by the size of the Statue of Liberty. You know how tall the Statue of Liberty is?
Like 600 feet.
305 feet.
Oh, no way. They're the same size.
It's not even as tall as Big Ben.
So to you, Big Ben is an incredible feat of architecture.
Well, it's just a clock that's taller than the Statue of Liberty. But I didn't expect Big Ben to be taller than the Statue of Liberty.
315 feet is tall for a clock. It's not tall for a building. That's my response.
But the clock is just the top of the building.
It's right? Just a clock.
It's not all a clock.
It's all clock. It's all clock. Inside, there's just clock inner workings from the top of the building to the bottom.
Years. There's years.
All right, that's enough. Okay, just real quick housekeeping stuff before we go. Ways that you can support the show if you so choose and want to hear more about 315-foot clocks. You can find us on Twitter at DTS_pod1, on YouTube at Destination the Show. You can tweet us. Ways that you can help us download the episodes. You can also send us questions either on Twitter, or we have an email address that people actually use now, which is amazing and great. And thank you guys for sending questions. That's destinationtheshow@gmail.com. Destination the Show, all one word. We will be back next week, recording on Wednesday for episode 55. That's going to be our Wrap Up the Twins System episode. That will be everyone you're interested in that we haven't talked about. Billy Amick, Eduardo Beltre, Peyton Eales, all those guys who are really interesting. And there's still a ton of interesting dudes to cover. Adrian Barraquez, we'll get to all of them. We'll be back, and then we're jumping into some guest episodes the weeks that will follow that. Until then, go Lynx.